Hey, welcome to Monday on Where All the Ladies At. That means we are talking about mythology. Where All the Ladies At is a podcast where I dive deep into mystery, that's weird, history, myth, and legend. That's where I was going with that. And really put a spotlight on the ladies in all three of those aspects, because I feel like if you hear noise, that's just my cat. She's decided to go crazy. And it's all three of those places don't really give enough credit to women. So that's why I did it. My name is Kim. I am your host. I am a history nerd. I am an archaeology groupie, and I am a writer by trade. So obviously myth holds a special portion to me because I am a fantasy writer as well. So that it makes its presence known. Let me just say that. Anyways, this month we are celebrating Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I know that is not a global thing, but it is a holiday in the U.S., or it was, and it still is in my heart. So this month we are putting a spotlight on many different goddesses and historical figures from the Asian world. Not so much from Pacific Islander, but on the Asian world for sure. Today we're taking a trip to Java, and we're going to check out one of their goddesses, and she is pretty darn cool. Alright, all fixed up. Sorry guys, I just got a new tattoo, or actually I got a tattoo fixed, and so it's in its healing process, and so yeah. Anyways, before we jump into Dewi Lanjar, and I think that's how you say her name, by the way, as always, if I pronounce things, feel free to correct me as long as you do it in a nice way. And she is a goddess that is from the Javanese culture, and I hardly knew anything about the Javanese culture, so I learned a lot about it as I was doing research. Before we jump into her, though, let's do a little housekeeping and shameless plugging. If you want to reach out to me, you can do that. I have all the social media, I think. I have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. There's also an email in the description box in case you don't like social media. I know it sounds weird, but there are people out there that live their life without it. If you want to support the podcast, as long as you would like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, do all that kind of cool stuff, interact with the video or audio. The more you do so, the more the chosen platform's algorithm, whether that be YouTube or Spotify, gets the idea that people like it, and then decides that maybe more people would like it, and will push me out, and we can build a really cool community that likes to talk about ladies and in history. If you want to kick a little cash my way, by all means, please do, you can. I'm never going to turn it down. You can go to my Buy Me a Coffee or my Patreon. There you can donate to me. I am trying to work on being able to have more time to do this, as well as get some new equipment. And so every little bit helps. If you want more on this woman and others, you might want to check out my Medium publication. As I said in the beginning, I am a writer by trade, so I do have a publication over there. And if you're into the magical, mystical, spiritual, kind of cool wellness, like lifestyle and that kind of thing, you can also check out my other podcast. It's called Our Mystic Road Trip. There I talk about tarot, crystals, life coaching. My cat is going crazy. And so if that's something you're into, I'd really love you to join that community as well. That, I think, is it for the shameless plugging and housekeeping. So now we can get started. With this week's episode. But before we do, as always, I want to look at Javanese culture and the role of women in it. Because, as I always say, I think by understanding the culture, the time, and what was going on and how women acted, you can understand a little bit more about the mythology and why women were treated that way in that mythology, right? Hold on. Okay. I thought I was going to sneeze for a second. So, let's talk about it, right? So to fully understand her significance, right? Dewi Lanjar, and I think that's once again how you say it. We have to really kind of explore the broader Javanese worldview, right? So, in particular, we're going to look at the time period of the Mataram Sultanate era. And this was a time when the Javanese people kind of lived really, really close in harmony with nature and spiritual beliefs, right? The spiritual world was not a separate or distant realm, but was woven into the fabric of everyday life. The sea was a spiritual force, and it held a lot of deep meaning for the people of Java. Once again, it's an island, and you're going to find any country that is an island or even an archipelago, like Greece and Italy, right? The sea is super important. It was a provider of food. It could be dangerous, but it was still sacred, and it was really had this undeniable role in the cultural consciousness of Java, right? Women in the Javanese society during this period were often seen as the nurturers of life, right? They were expected to fill the roles as per the usual, right? Mothers and wives and such. These roles were super crucial, right, for ensuring the continuation of the societal, of the cultural traditions and all that. So, despite the societal expectations, mythology still painted women in a much more complex and powerful role, right? So in Javanese mythology, that figures like Dewi Lanjar, who we'll talk about, and Nia Roro Kidul, and I think I pronounced those right, were really celebrated as divine female figures, right? The thing is that any of the older cultures, I think you're going to really see that the goddesses and the females are looked at as divine. But these goddesses didn't only just bring the nurturing qualities, right? They had strength, they had wisdom, and power. And these goddesses were very deeply connected to the natural world. They served as like protectors and guides, and as I said, divine energy symbols. This was kind of in contrast with the societal expectations, but it still showed, because even though women were kind of relegated to those roles were elevated, maybe more so than they are now, right? Elevated. Being a mother and being a wife back then, once again, was the ability to keep the traditions going, was to keep the people going, right? You can't have a civilization if you don't have women, right? It would die out. So even though women were kind of in this limited role, they still were in an elevated role, if that makes sense. And when we take a closer look and we start looking at the sea, which is what Dewi Lanjar was kind of over, like she was over the northern sea, right? The goddess of the northern sea. It kind of shows how it makes sense, right? So there's a duality. We talked about duality consistently with all the goddesses and anybody we've talked about, the legends, the myths, whatever it is. There is always duality. There's always this like ability to either create or nurture and to destroy. So Dewi Lanjar, the goddess of the northern sea, had that ability, right? Like the sea itself, she was a force of both calm and turbulence. And women in the Javanese culture were often expected to embody the same balance, right? Nurturing and tender, yet also capable of being strong, resolute, and even fierce when they need to be. The sea in Javanese mythology really became kind of a powerful symbol, right? And I think, once again, let me repeat, if you'll find that on almost any island where the sea is kind of like, it could be its salvation or it could be its destruction, right? There is, while look, as a myth, I'm sorry, my words are not, it's probably the full moon in Scorpio. Honestly, it's, anyways, remember I said I like the mystical, magical stuff. Anyways, so as a myth, her connection with the sea underscores the idea of spiritual autonomy, right? It's a key theme in the mythos of many powerful women in Javanese lore. Dewi Lanjar's life's physical realm might have been shaped by societal expectations of women, but her spiritual journey was her own, right? Is this crooked? Be a little? Let's see if we can. Sorry, guys. That wasn't great. Let's see if I can. All right. Well, I hope that's better. It could not have been wrong anyways, but I'm kind of looking at it, looks a little uneven. Anyways, so she chose the path of meditation and transcendence, and in doing so, she claimed a new role, right? So she became a spiritual leader. So she was a mortal who became a spiritual leader kind of idea. The sea itself represents freedom and mystery, and water is a life giver and a force of destruction, like I said. So it makes perfect sense. They were seen, women were viewed in Javanese mythology as capable of immense creation, right? But they also possessed that power of destruction too, right? And I think that's it. Even today, women in the Javanese culture continue to kind of navigate that really delicate balance between sacred and mundane, right? Some societal expectations still exist. But, they still have the myths too to look at and to kind of look up to, right? Women in Java, through these myths, are kind of reminded that they are nurturing and authoritative. Can create and they can destroy. It's basically the femininity of the forces of nature in aspects. So that's kind of a little bit about. There's so much more about the Javanese culture I wanted to put in here, but once again, I try to keep these things like 30 to 40 minutes because I know you guys have a lot to do out there. So I if you're interested, by the time we're done, I highly suggest go checking it out. There's some really cool things, right? All right, so let's talk about Dewi Lanjar. Dewi Lanjar. I think that's how you say it. That's how I'm going to say it. If I'm wrong, like I said, correct me. She is the goddess of the Northern Sea, as I said. She may not enjoy kind of the same widespread recognition as her most famous counterpart, which is Nia Roro Kudu. That's the goddess of the Southern Sea. But she holds a pretty important place in local traditions and spiritual practices, especially in Pekalongan, and that's a city in central Java. Her connection to the sea is the heart of her identity and significance, right? In Indonesian culture, the sea is, as I said, a mystical and spiritual entity as well as a physical entity, right? It's really kind of the space where the material world and spiritual realms kind of intersect. For the Javanese, the sea represents the birthplace of myths and the meeting point with the divine. So it's a realm of fate where stories unfold and where all the experiences crossing boundaries and all that kind of stuff happen. As the goddess of the Northern Sea, Dewi Lanjar embodies the mystery and life force, right, of the ocean. The sea is unpredictable at best, and so she is both a protector and sometimes a vengeful person, right? In this way, Dewi Lanjar, she is a guardian and a spirit guide and all that kind of stuff. Symbolism is kind of very rich and layered with her if we look at it. We have to integrate natural and spiritual forces kind of mixed together. She represents like the fluidity and power of life itself, ever-changing but constant, right? The tides, the waves, and the currents. All these are kind of things that are constants. It's cyclical nature, which is super important in most of the old world religions. Everything is emotion, and yet they return, fall, and they have their own rhythm and they order, but everything works its way out, right? So because of that, sometimes she's looked at as a symbol of balance. Not really just between the material world and the spiritual world realms, but like between creation and destruction, right? There's that fine balance. Her transformation from a grieving widow to a powerful spiritual figure is at a core piece of the Javanese culture, right? The idea of growth through adversity. You know, it's kind of mirrors that Javanese understanding that even in the deepest sorrow or loss, there can be rebirth, right? There can be renewal. It's not done. Like, you know, it's so hard sometimes for us to understand that bad things have to happen. And I think we all kind of know that, but it's through adversity growth comes, and that's kind of what this is all about, right? So, she's got some personal transformation, and you know, all this really speaks to like the deep connection between personal and spiritual growth, right? In addition to her connection with the sea, she also is linked to the moon, which makes sense, right? The tides are controlled by the moon, and it's also very feminine in most old cultures. Remember, we did a little while ago sun goddesses, so some don't see it that way. For the most part, though, moons are usually feminine in energy, right? Because it does have a cyclical nature, because it does control water, right? The moon's influence over the tides is perfect, right? So therefore, she has the ability to regulate the seas. I think also, like, there's some introspection to be had with her, and very fierce protection. You know, her light is about nurturing. It's about balancing that nurturing with the tempestuousness, all of those things that I've said before. Now, when it came to worship, her worship is very prominent, and I said at Pekalongon in Central Java. They honor her through rituals and offerings. The city is kind of viewed as more than just a physical space, right? Her spirit is said to actually reside in the waters, and that's like she actually is the one who directs influence over she has direct influence over everybody's lives, right? Locals tend to offer like flowers and incense and fruits, as acts of like reverence and respect, right? You're really looking for protection and blessings. One of the most important sites for worship is the Slamoran River, and that's located, it's a sacred location near Pinkonglong, and is said to house her palace. It's been a place of pilgrimage for a long time, especially for those seeking her favor, and you know, that's kind of where they would go to do it. In local belief, her power extends beyond blessings and protection. You know, her connection with the sea gives the ability to really claim those who enter the water, you know, especially children who might disappear without a trace. The phenomenon is seen as Dewi Lanjar calling them into her spiritual realm. So this is kind of how maybe they like explained children that went missing, right? But she's not only really known for just protection, also sacrifice as well. And that's, you know, there's like, it's that intangible connection that we've been talking about, right? Worshipping her serves as both exploration of nature and a way of navigating predictable lives and such. So now comes archaeology. You know, it's my favorite thing. Her legend pretty much is oral tradition. So there's not a lot of physical evidence that corroborates her importance in the mythology and the cultural lives of the Javanese people. Archaeological sites along the Java coast have uncovered like remnants of ancient temples and shrines dedicated to sea deities. So maybe one of those was Dewa. Obviously, those places were sites where the rituals and offerings of the gods went on. Among the artifacts discovered at some of these near the coastal sites were like ceramic vessels, golden jewelry, statues of female deities, of course, and some of them really bear striking examples of goddess figures. So that's how they figured it was goddess worship. These do suggest that there was worship of goddesses like Dewi Lanjar. The presence of these also provide physical evidence of the cultural significance of the goddesses, right? They wouldn't be made if they didn't have some cultural importance, right? In addition, there's been some discoveries that kind of helped piece together the Javanese understanding of their relationship with the sea. This, as I said, worked like coastal shrines and temples. They were dedicated to sea deities. These sites underscore the long history of reverence, you know, and it's very interesting. Like, it's very hard sometimes when you realize that a lot of these cultures were very oral when it came to their traditions. So the only people we have that can piece it together are the people themselves, and stories change as the years go. Um, and archaeologists, because those are the two people that can piece stuff together. So, which is why I think archaeologists are superheroes. So that's it for the main thing about Dewi Lanjar. Now it's time for the favorite part of the day. That's right, story time. So, as always, please sit down, and once again, remember that these are oral traditions, so I do have to kind of fudge a little bit and take some creative license, but I try to stay within the cultural expectation. As always, grab your beverage of choice, whether that's a cocktail or a cocoa or a nice bottle of mineral water, and grab yourself a blankie, and let's get going. Let's journey back in time to the land of myth, where the boundaries between history and legend fade into the mist. Picture the shores of Java, shrouded in a veil of fog, the air thick with the scent of salt water and the hum of the ocean breeze. This is the setting where the tale of Dewi Lanjar unfolds, an epic story of love, loss, and spiritual rebirth. Once upon a time, Dewi Lanjar was known by another name, Dewi Rara Kuning, a princess of unparalleled beauty and grace. She was revered by her people, admired not only for her outer appearance, but also for her noble heart. She embodied the ideal of the perfect woman in Javanese society, gentle, poised, and ready to fulfill the duties of royalty. However, her perfect world was shattered when her beloved husband passed away. Stricken by grief and heartache, Dewi Rara Kuning was left in a state of sorrow. Her once vibrant spirit dimmed, and she retreated from the world, seeking solace in the natural world. In her moments of solitude, Dewi Rara Kuning began to look inward. She wandered the forests, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, and meditated by the sea, listening to its eternal whispers. It was during one of these solitary meditations that she encountered Penembahan Senopti, the founder of the Mataram Sultanate, a revered spiritual and political leader. Senopti, a wise and powerful figure, recognized the turmoil in Dewi Rara Kuning's heart and took her under his guidance. He instructed her to embark on a journey to the southern coast of Java, a place where the ocean in its vastness and mystery holds the secrets of the universe. With Senopti's wisdom and encouragement, Dewi Rara Kuning journeyed to the coast, immersing herself in the ocean's rhythm and meditating deeply upon its ancient histories. The mystery waves, the wind, the salt, everything in nature began to speak to her, and she began to unravel the truths of the universe. Through her meditation, she received moksha, spiritual liberation, the freeing herself from the bonds of earthly suffering. Sorry if you hear that, that's my neighbors. It was in this moment of enlightenment that she became a devoted follower of Nya Roro Kudu, the powerful queen of the Southern Sea. However, Dewi Rara Kuning's connection to the sea did not end with her transformation. In her new divine form, she made a simple yet profound request. She sought to return to her homeland of Pikanlongon, a place dear to her heart, where she could serve as the protector of her people. She longed to offer them the same spiritual protection and guidance that she had received on her path of self-discovery. Her wish was granted, and Dewi Lanjar was born. Her divine spirit became one with the northern sea, a sacred body of water that would be her domain. From her hidden palace, located deep within the waves, Dewi Lanjar ruled with quiet power, invisible to the mortal eye, yet ever present in the hearts of the people. The people of Pikanlongon honored her as a guardian deity, seeking her blessings and protection from the dangers of the sea. They offered prayers and made offerings at the shore, hoping to invoke her mercy and strength. Dewi Lanjar's divine spirit was said to entwine with the waves themselves, and those who prayed with sincerity believed they could feel her presence in the cool sea breeze. The myth of Dewi Lanjar is not merely a tale of a goddess. It is a symbol of spiritual growth and transformation. Her journey from a grieving widow to the powerful and compassionate protector mirrors the Javanese belief in personal evolution. Through her sorrow, she found strength, and through her search for meaning, she became a force of guidance and protection for those she loved. The myth of Dewi Lanjar speaks to the essence of Javanese spirituality, a world where the lines between the material and spiritual realms blur, where personal tragedy can give rise to divine purpose, and where the forces of nature are intertwined with the human spirit. And that's it. It's interesting because Dewi Lanjar basically is plays the role of the guardian. She protects land and sea and spiritual transcendence. Her myth is a tale of kind of like personal transformation, right? And that really mirrors what was happening in Javanese spirituality at the time. Her story also speaks to the power of women in Javanese myth, right? She's a reflection of the feminine and divine. The Supati saw something special in her, and even though she was a woman, he still took her under his wing and kind of guided her. And I think that's amazing, right? And that wraps it up for Dewi Lanjar, the goddess of the North Seas in Java. So much more could probably have been said. And honestly, I'm never saying that I won't go back and revisit Javanese mythology because it was really, really interesting. And it's part of the world that, even someone who's really into mythology, there's always parts of the world where maybe they're not as well versed. In Asia and the Pacific Island, I'm definitely not really well versed in those. So it was really, really cool to kind of learn new stuff. And I hope you enjoyed as well. As always, guys, if you want to reach out to me, you can definitely do that through social media, through the email, as I said. If you want to support the podcast, please just like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, do all that good stuff, please, so that we can build a community, so we can talk about these amazing ladies all together. If you want more on this and goddess and others, make sure you check out my Medium publication. It is a little backlogged, but we will get caught up eventually. And if you are interested in magical, mystical, spiritual stuff, and if you're into mythology, odds are maybe you might be. You might want to check out my other podcast. It's called Our Mystic Road Trip. And that's it for this week, guys. As always, stay curious, stay safe, stay blessed.